It's Nolan. Now, before we get started, make sure y'all hitting that like button. Make sure y'all sharing it on your respective platforms. Let somebody know what we're doing today. Now, let's get into the show.
Money, money machine, let it ring. 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 Feliz Cumpleaños. I was making macchiatos, trying to pay this condo. All these fake magazines trying to book a combo. Throwing shade on these rappers like a Fenty model. I keep my heart in my pocket for show. Ain't no more honoring cold. Niggas just lie like some hoes. I just got time for my goals. I'm in a prominent role, hitting my prime and they froze. Yeah, these fuck niggas is out of control. I put my money on myself and cash back like credit. Some niggas tried to do the same, but they got caught ass betting. It's no shame, no more compass. No direction, but my section seeing more abundance. We about to tour in London. Broccolini with squash pasta and fresh sauce. The new Nipsey tape buzzing like Crenshaw. I've been raw, the pin guard. My shit is a myth like a centaur. You got a problem in sin form.
What's going on, beautiful people? It's the kid J Nolan here. Welcome back to another episode of Inside the Industry, your number one source for music, entertainment, commentary, and breakdowns. Hope everybody's doing well out there this Saturday afternoon. We're about to get into another update from the whole UMG Drake saga, right? We've been keeping up with all the filings in the docket all this week, and today is no different. Once again, just right after I finished doing my video yesterday about UMG and Lucian Grange responding to Drake, we got another filing from UMG, this time trying to make sure that Kendrick Lamar's recording contract is sealed. Okay? They're doing their best to make sure that his contract is not leaked out. You know what I'm saying? Because Drake wants this. He wants an unredacted version, meaning an unedited, like without any cuts. He wants to see the complete contract from Kendrick Lamar. UMG is trying to understand why that's relevant to the case when all of the pieces of the contract that he previously requested, they've already submitted. However, Drake is not satisfied, right? They want to see Kendrick's contract. They want to see Kendrick's catalog valuation at this current point. They want to see 5 years of revenue from Interscope. They want to see 5 years of earnings reports from CEO of Interscope, John Janik. And they're like, bro, what is all of this, right? On Drake's side, he's saying, y'all have been experiencing tremendous success ever since Not Like Us came out. I just want to see how much more success y'all have seen as a label, as a company, as an entity since this record came out compared to how y'all was looking before. It doesn't really make a lot of sense. I understand where he's coming from to say that this song is massive and it's bringing in a great load of money, but at the same time, that's what the hits do. You know what I'm saying? And that still doesn't prove anything to say, oh, y'all had an incentive to come up with this behind the scenes when he literally dropped Not Like Us in the middle of a fucking day while they were engaging in a back and forth rap battle for 4 days prior. You wanted to go low. You wanted to talk about this man's woman. You wanted to talk about this man's kids. You wanted to say this man's best friend is sleeping with his girl. He said, okay, I already warned you once about talking about the family. I'm on your ass. He went upside your head. You've been recovering for a whole year. The wound still is not healed. And here we are. So let's get to the paperwork of UMG trying to make sure that Kendrick's contract remains sealed, to make sure that there are no mistakes, no unexplainable errors as to why it gets out, because you already know, because it's supposed to be for attorneys' eyes only anyway. So if it gets out, it ain't going to be too many other people you point at anyway. But let's get to it, all right? Here's the paperwork. This is a 2-page filing. It says, Dear Judge Vargas, we write on behalf of defendant UMG Records, Inc., pursuant to Federal Rule of Civil Procedure 5.2, D and Section 10C of the court's individual rules and practices in civil cases in support of sealing the redacted contract between UMG and Kendrick Lamar Duckworth, the plaintiff, Aubrey Drake Graham, filed in connection with his motion to compel. UMG produced the redacted contract to Drake in response to his discovery request for any contracts between UMG and Lamar reflecting UMG's right to approve, reject, refuse to publish, edit, amend, alter, or veto the publication of Lamar's songs or music videos. We talked about that yesterday. They were showing resistance because they like everything that he's asked for, we've given. Why is he now asking for more? Why is he even trying to get these emails and communications from Lucian Grange when he already agreed that he would not bother Lucian Grange? What is that about? They say the redactions limit the disclosure to the parts of the Lamar contract necessary to understand any such rights available to UMG, right? And this is all dealing with them having the right to say yes to a song submitted. They can reject it. They can refuse to put it out. They can make you edit, which also means amend or alter, or veto, meaning nah, right? Now, again, I said, I don't know. Maybe the language in his contract is different than what Drake is accustomed to, because why is he not satisfied with seeing that piece? I don't know. UMG respectfully requests that the court allow the Lamar contract to remain under seal because even as redacted, it contains commercially sensitive and confidential business information. Although there is generally a presumption against sealing judicial documents, see generally, right? The presumption of public access and filing submitted in connection with discovery disputes is generally somewhat lower than the presumption applied to material introduced at trial or in connection with dispositive motions. Moreover, even when the presumption applies at full strength, courts regularly seal proprietary, competitively sensitive business information, right? Because we're talking about artists that are competitive with each other, constantly trying to figure out what terms did you agree to? What terms did you agree to? What terms did I agree to? Right? Trying to get a competitive edge on your peers in the market. And we already know, we don't know the specifics of Drake's contract, but we do know, once again, he sold his music to UMG. That $400 million deal included masters, included publishing, and different things, right? People have been saying he's in a 360. I see a lot of the Drake fans that are resisting that term as in 360 because that would also entail UMG cashing in on his touring, his merchandise, and any other additional endorsements or partnerships that he were to enter into, like Stake, who's been giving him a lot of money, right? We don't know if UMG cashes in on that, so we can't necessarily say it's a 360. But we do know, as far as his music is concerned, they're definitely bringing in those profits because they don't give you $400 million and then say you also get to retain all your ownership and receive all your royalties. That there's no mission in recovering the funds if that's the case. Anyway, additionally, courts in the district seal certain contracts in their entirety where those contracts reflect an ongoing contractual relationship with one of a party's current business partners because the party's business relationships and interests and the privacy interests of non-parties would be detrimentally affected by the disclosure of confidential contracts that the parties to the sealed contract expect to remain private. If we're doing business with the same company, then what benefit does it serve to Kendrick or UMG to disclose the terms of the deal that they agreed upon for one person? And now we got to let you see it so that you can say, hey, why didn't I get this deal? It's not against the law to have a different deal with one person versus another. Here, UMG seeks sealing of negotiated contract terms relating to whether and to what extent UMG exercises control over the content and publication of Kendrick Lamar's creative output. Sounds to me that they have a limited amount of control over Kendrick's content and publication. I got to be honest. Which, again, was exercised in the battle because all of the music that was released during the battle came out when you looked at the label for the first week or so, first really damn near a month almost, it just said Kendrick Lamar. It didn't say under exclusive license to Interscope. It didn't say none of that shit for a minute. It just said literally Kendrick Lamar. Like, I appear courtesy of myself. And then at a later time, that was when their name got in the label column. This is clearly commercially sensitive information. If these terms were disclosed, then other artists could use them in their own negotiations with UMG, such as by demanding either similar or different treatment, and other record labels could use them when competing with UMG to sign or re-sign artists, including potentially Lamar himself. Let me read that again. If these terms were disclosed, then other artists could use them in their own negotiations with UMG, such as by demanding either similar or different treatment, and other record labels could use them when competing with UMG to sign or re-sign artists, including potentially Lamar himself. So that would give everybody access, right? Because other companies would love to woo Kendrick out of the UMG Interscope offices, right? You don't think Atlantic would love to get a Kendrick Lamar or a Def Jam, which would never happen? But I'm just saying, you don't think any other division in the industry would be like, well, shit, if they're doing that for you, here's what we can offer. And then you got so many other artists who have not achieved what Kendrick Lamar has. If they see what he's done for himself and what he's negotiated, they can now go to the label and say, hey, I see what you did for Kendrick. You're gonna have to do this XYZ for me. And ultimately, it's probably gonna get those artists kicked out the fucking room, and they're gonna be mad and saying, well, shit, how you gonna give it to him but not me? Because you ain't him. Drake. Shouldn't have sold you shit. Thus, sealing is warranted because public disclosure of these confidential negotiated contract terms will be detrimental to UMG's competitive standing and business relationships with current and prospective partners. So they then point out all of these different cases in which their argument would be valid, according to case law. They say granting sealing after finding that the presumption of public access is overcome by the countervailing interest in protection of confidential commercial information. Sealing is further warranted because the Lamar contract reflects an ongoing contractual relationship with one of UMG's current business partners and would expose information that both UMG and Lamar expect to remain private. For the foregoing reasons, UMG respectfully requests that the court grant leave to file the Kendrick Lamar contract under seal. We ain't never seen Jay-Z contract. Kanye's contract got out because he was talking about he was a slave. Come to find out, we saw how Def Jam had did all these addendums and, made all these edits and amendments in his contract. But then when it was time for him to ask for his catalog back, they weren't so eager to part ways with it because they kept investing money into him. He kept coming back, re-upping and renegotiating his deal, trying to get more ownership, trying to get more money. Then once Kanye came out and went full Nazi, they let him out his deal. Said we don't want nothing to do with him. So most of the time for artists of this stature, we don't get to see the specifics of their contract. None of that stuff gets out, even in legal trouble, right? I remember Megan Thee Stallion's contract came out. I don't know who put that out there, but I do remember Roc Nation said that the terms of her deal with 1501 were unconscionable, right? And then eventually it leaked out. Now, interestingly enough, as all of this stuff has been coming out and we're having these contract conversations and disputes and basically trying to get understanding of what it is that Drake and his team are trying to achieve with all these requests they've been making, we have the DJ that don't spin, and he's coming out trying to read the paperwork and, decipher it for his own purposes and his own audience. But I found it very interesting when this clip came across my desk of him evaluating some of this stuff as well, because as it pertains to the lawsuit, he actually does not support Drake in this endeavor. He's been said it. I don't like this guy. Don't care for him at all. But when it comes to Drake's lawsuit against UMG and trying to implicate Kendrick, he's not in support of it. So I want to use this for additional context because he also give some information as it pertains to as it pertains to Drake's deals, being that he's his number one fan. He then gets into a little bit about what Drake may or may not own out of his catalog. And again, we're just using this for context, not taking his word as the gospel because he is a clown. But I found it very interesting when, the number one fan goes a little bit rogue.
Aubrey Graham claims I'm behind a scheme to devalue his brand.
Hold on, let me skip past this because we already read through this contract stuff. Just want to get to the points he's making.
The fact, a label, when you want more money from a label thinks how much they could be more in the business of being with you. So, for example, they don't want to invest $1 billion if they're like, oh, we're just going to split the profits 50-50 after recoupment. No, they want to feel like they have complete investment into your business. It's like, just think about it. If you have a startup company and you want somebody to give you $5 million, they're going to want what's called IP, right? We want to own some of the IP. We want to own some of the company. That's just what it is. So when Drake gets this deal, and this is now my speculation, they have, in 2017, I believe, Drake renegotiated, from what I've heard, multiple times. His first recording contract, which Thank Me Later is under, and Take Care, is completely owned by UMG. It's a standard contract, and if you look in everybody's standard contract, most likely, especially back then when you had no clout and you were getting put on by somebody else, which Drake did, you didn't have leverage to say you want much of your masters. So those masters are usually owned completely by the company. If you ask me, I would believe that Drake's Take Care, Thank Me Later, owned completely by Universal. Every time you renegotiate, you get a better deal. So the next negotiation, I believe that Drake negotiated for a part, maybe 20%, maybe 25%. And that existed for the next 2 albums. Then all I do know is going up to 2020, Drake basically, for everything that was released afterwards, it was a 50-50 split. It was going to be dropped on his own label, but it's been 50-50 before. So
just check out what he said. He said that the first 2 albums, the debut album and the album to follow, are completely owned by UMG, meaning Drake has zero ownership. OVO was not established. So he was just in a standard artist deal, and he was in a less than standard artist deal because he was signed to one nigga that was signed to another nigga. Not trying to be funny either, because you got to think, his paperwork originally was with Aspire Music. Aspire Music is Jazz Prince's label. We've talked about this numerous times on my channel. I got videos breaking that whole situation down, the lawsuits that followed because Jazz Prince never got the money that he was supposed to get from Cash Money. So remember, Drake was originally signed to Aspire Music. Aspire Music is Jazz Prince, Tez Bryant. Tez Bryant is Lil Wayne's former manager of many years. And there was a third partner, I forget what his name was. So they signed Drake to this deal. They take Drake to Wayne. Wayne says, I want to sign him. So now Young Money wants to sign Drake. So then he does a deal with Young Money, which by proxy is signed to Cash Money. And Cash Money by proxy is signed to Universal. So you got Drake at the back of the fucking bus. You got Aspire Music, you got Young Money, you got Cash Money, and then you got Universal. That's 4 companies in his pocket for those first few albums. He then says, as in the DJ that don't spin, that Drake then renegotiated his contract, 2015, 2016? So at that point, and I think he actually renegotiated before then. I want to say Nothing Was the Same might have came out in conjunction with OVO, but let me check to be clear. Yeah, so that's correct. Nothing Was the Same, which came out in 2013. At this point, this is his first album that OVO actually has stake in, right? So at that point, Aspire is like in the background. Aspire doesn't even show up. When you look up his discography, you don't even see Aspire on any of his albums. You know what I'm saying? But they're getting their percentage. It's almost like they don't manage them. They just got them hemmed up, right? Really. They discovered them, they gave them to Wayne. So now they're entitled to a finder's fee pretty much until I think Birdman said that money was tied up until like 2018 or something like that. So they're eating off him, or supposedly eating. Their escrow is accruing because they're not actually receiving the money. It's just accruing till 2018. So at that point, 2013, Drake finally gets a little bit of skin in the game. He gets some ownership with OVO over his music, right? From that point, he starts doing other stuff. I'll let Homeboy continue a little bit. I just wanted to clarify when his shit came in. But those first two albums, Dunzo.
It was 50. He owned it, but it wasn't, OVO sound wasn't involved. So it's like a complicated, like you got to be in the weeds of understand how these contracts work. I haven't heard Drake selling his catalog, but I have heard him conceding some of his catalog despite his leverage because he wants more money, right? A thing that he could potentially try to buy back later, even though I'm going to be honest with you, I think it's just going to be so much valuable. It's going to cost him an arm and a leg. However, what Taylor Swift did, and this is standard, hey, if you want me to stay here, give me back piece of my back catalog. Like Taylor Swift just got her masters back. Universal bought her masters back to hand deliver to her because she's staying at Universal. That was a caveat that was included in the deal. If you ever hear about the Taylor Swift story, when she signs to Republic, it is noted in the contract that Universal will bring her back her masters. A deal that they paid reportedly like $300 million for. So they bought it back to give to her for free. But they got her to sign. So think about it. They're just thinking about it as an overall investment. So the point what I'm trying to say for the simpletons is Drake's not in a 360. They're saying that we are in the business of Drake. We own some of his albums. That has nothing to do. A 360 would mean your current contract. We own, and your masters being owned is not a 360 as well. A 360 means you own his touring. You own at least a part of it. And I'm not ruling it out that they could not own a part of Drake's touring because Drake has some nasty deal with Live Nation. Don't you see Drake always touring? Drake got some deal with Live Nation. Like he's pulling in. By the way, and this is how I know that deal exists. I'm gonna find out more about it. I got some people that are going to get me the details. Live Nation reports earnings. They said they were like 10% up. Listen, look. Live Nation, they reported more revenue. Why? Look, reported second quarter highlighting an increase in revenue to 7 million and 10 billion. Or I'm trying to like explain this in a way that makes sense for y'all. Okay. The point is this. Live Nation, I think they did some deals with these people. Don't you realize most artists now are just going on tour perpetually, like all the time? Like there was a time these guys were dropping more music. It's now, number one, I think it's a pandemic reset. We're out of the pandemic. We've been for 3 years. And also, these deals at Live Nation are given out because the way people are experiencing music, the most lucrative form of it is actually through concerts. And that's why you're seeing more people being pushed to do arena tours. You're seeing Drake constantly touring. They gave Drake some nasty deal. When I mean nasty deal, like a lot of money. But that's why you see Drake's like, oh, you think Drake wants to go to fucking Switzerland, my nigga? Like, no disrespect to y'all in Switzerland. Like, come on, bro. Like, yo, Live Nation got his ass working. Got to work for this bread. So, does Universal have any participation in that? And I guess, like, I'm kind of arguing my own point here. what Lucian Grain said doesn't mean he's in a 360. They're saying that we have invested in his catalog. A music company either owning your catalog or investing in your catalog is not 360. 360 only comes if Universal is busting down his deal with Nike, busting down his deal with Live Nation. But when it comes to music and publishing, that usually falls under a music company or label, and that label usually have publishing houses within them. So using that leverage is not a 360. That's just, yo, it's like Shark Tank. Yo, my nigga, how much money you looking for? You're looking for $5 million. Well, I want half of your company. Right? Like some people might be like, oh, we'll give you that amount of money, but we need to recoup first, and then we get split this on the profits. Or somebody's gonna be like, no, we'll do it as an investment. We want half of your fucking company. So that's what Lucian Grange is talking about. He's not talking about a 360 at all. Only way we would know if Drake is in a 360 is if we find out that Universal is directly profiting from his deal with Live Nation, because he has a deal with Live Nation. These artists, they go on tour, they get a deal.
All right, so that's the DJ that don't spin. I'm not going to play the rest. That's a 17-minute video, and that's way too much time to be spending with this motherfucker, all right? I just wanted to go ahead and play this because, again, he's offering insight that isn't necessarily favorable to Drake. You know what I'm saying? He's playing it up to make it seem like, yo, they don't got him in a 360, da-da-da. He's fighting that narrative, but even within trying to fight that narrative, he's still displaying that UMG has a considerable majority stake in Drake's catalog, which is why they gave him that money, right? Because he's in the business of taking deals, right? Even Jay-Z said the same thing about Drake when he was trying to get Tidal off the ground, and Drake went and did a direct deal with Apple instead of working with Jay, right? So he said, okay, you'd rather go take deals. Okay, that's fine. Was trying to build something from the ground up, something that you can have some equity in. You're not ready for the equity conversation. That's cool. Go get your money, right? So that's the way he operates. He wants to see upfront money. But what upfront money ends up doing is dwindling down your long-term returns, right? Just like when a person goes and we see all these artists over the pandemic, the last 5 years, that went and sold their catalogs. A lot of artists got 50 million, 20 million, 80 million, 100 million. And we like, oh, wow, we see all these big deals. But in many of those cases, the artists only are going to receive that one lump sum, which is great money, especially if you know how to use it, if you're not overspending or putting yourself in the red based on your lifestyle. A lot of these people would rather have their money now, invest it, flip it, do other things with it, quadruple it, than to wait for it, right? But to me, if you're that type of person and you're looking into Kendrick Lamar's contract, a person who has not sold his catalog, then clearly you must be insecure about something, because typically when you don't accept large upfront payments, what you end up doing is taking a larger percentage on the back end for your long-term returns. You get more ownership. You end up making more money over time rather than taking a big upfront. So that's typically how music deals work. You can get it either on the front end, because a lot of people don't trust the back end. They don't know if they're going to have longevity. They don't know if their buzz is going to be the same, if they're going to be able to continue to sell records. Sometimes labels are not always transparent about how the money is being made or where it's going. So they like, man, just let me see my money today. Other artists who aren't so worried about money perhaps have a little bit more of a frugal mindset. Not to say that they don't have money, because Kendrick definitely is rich as fuck. But we also don't see Kendrick out here spending irresponsibly. Remember when that nigga went up there on the Grammys and we like, damn, that nigga icy. Where that chain come from? He's not a gaudy person. He just pops out every now and then and it's like, damn, you know that nigga eating. You get what I'm saying? It's two different ideologies and methodologies. And now we see Drake kind of squirming a little bit. Like, well, what is it? What is it about him? Not to mention the fact that we see Drake, forming relationships with all these streamers. That's another form of, digital currency for him, is to take up real estate by joining forces with them, having alliances with them, being able to do streams with them to try to sway public opinion or to keep a newer audience invested in him so that he doesn't necessarily stay cold, right? When he puts a song out and it doesn't do nothing, what does he do? He goes and does a fucking stream with Aiden Ross to go tap into that audience. Like, I'm still here, y'all. I know that song wasn't all that great, but I'm still out here. Y'all still love me, right? Anybody? Okay, let's go do a stake stream. Stake is gonna pay me $1 million to go promote gambling today. All right, let's load up the stream, right? He's not a businessman. He accepts payments for his time, which everybody gets paid for their time. But again, some people would rather say, you ain't gotta pay me up right now. I want to see what y'all make, and I want to eat off of the overall pie. I don't want my pie pre-sliced. I want my pie out of what everybody, the big sum. If it's $5 billion on the table, let me get 20, 30% of that. Fuck. You know what I'm saying? It may end up being the same amount of money, but you're getting it in different ways, and you still end up with more stake in it to where you don't gotta sell out. Again, that's what people that actually have bread do to create what we call generational wealth. Just saying. Not saying anybody's right or wrong, right? These people are doing deals at a level that we simple people may not ever experience. So I never come on my platform and say Drake is broke or this person is broke or this person is broke. Y'all have never heard me say that, right? Even Dame Dash, I say, hey, Dame Dash may be considered broke by his industry peers, but to me, you know, I don't want to be in debt. I don't want to be in the arrears of child support. I don't want nobody coming and collecting on my motherfucking business. But he ain't homeless, you know what I'm saying? He ain't fucked up. He's just having to maneuver shit in a different way, which could probably be very uncomfortable to him, although he plays up his ego. But I don't call these people broke because all it takes is one good deal, one good moment, and they could be back up. I'm not saying that in favor of Drake necessarily. I'm just saying when we have these conversations, I like to keep things in perspective of, hey, I'm not saying I'm above anybody. Do what you do. But if you out here trying to scrounge and try to find any way that you can, you know, gain access to this man's sensitive information, there's got to be a reason why you care so much. That's all I'm saying. And even the DJ that don't spin confirmed it because he was in these fucked up situations for the first decade of his career. Now he's in the second decade of his career. He's trying to figure it out. He took this big lump sum because everybody was eating off him for 10, 15 years. Now he's coming to the table trying to say, well, let me get a percentage off of Universal. That's what they claim, right? They say he wanted like 700 million plus a percentage of shares in UMG. And they said, no, sir. Never in a million years. Who do you think you are? Who died and made you Jesus? We didn't. So at that point, he went crazy, lost his motherfucking mind. All right. Let me know what y'all think about this down below in the comments. Be sure to like and share this video. If this is your first time seeing me on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Become an insider. I'll catch y'all on the next one, man. Peace.
King of my city and cul-de-sac. Coming out swinging like soldier rag. Leading my people like quarterback. Boy, I study this shit, I'm an almanac. Had to get up and grind. Knowledge is booming, I'm here to apply. Came with the chip and the dip, it just single the mind. We finna do more than survive. I need my check. Spinning the block for the gouda. We hitting the jeweler to flood out the net. We don't do beef for computers, I'm straight out the sewer. We come when you rest. Niggas be looking perplexed, so keeping my foot on their neck. No map, I trust my gut for the quest. But drama, I'm fully abreast. I was ready for years and they doubted me. All of a sudden they tell me they proud of me. I been dropping these haters like calories. Cross them out, I came back with some boundaries. Stand for my honor, but too raw, no corner. Packing the stick with a drummer. Wanna catch my bad, won't fumble. I done came too far to be humble.